Hey everyone, you're listening to the Simple Electronics Podcast. I'm your host, Dan from the Simple Electronics YouTube channel. This episode is brought to you by PCBWay, but more about them a little bit later on. Today, I am joined by nobody at all. It is tire season here in Canada, and so famously this time of the year, I'm extremely busy. It's a little bit worse with my bad back because every time I feel like I'm getting ahead of my back pain, I have 1 or 2 days they feel better. I have other obligations I have to get to, or I have another shift at work, and then I'm right back to square one. So I just need to survive through this last little bit, and then hopefully mid-November and December will be a little bit easier on me. But enough about me for now. We'll talk a little bit more about me a little bit later on. Because right now, I just want to tell you a little bit of what's been going on. So first and foremost, Hackaday Supercon in Pasadena, California, just completed on the 3rd of November. And if you don't know, the Hackaday Supercon is essentially all those Hackaday articles that you see all the time that most people love to read. Well, it's kind of like a con dedicated for that. It's like hardware hackers, makers, engineers, tech enthusiasts, all sorts of things. And they get together and they do workshops and hands-on activities and stuff like that. But the interesting thing for us sitting at home is that there are guest speakers who give talks on all sorts of things. And a lot of those things are electronics related. I will link the live section on Hackaday's YouTube channel in the show notes, so you can go check that out. But I want to talk about more specifically one specific talk, and it is by friend of the show, Ayesha. So in case you don't remember, Ayesha had a podcast episode, so she was on here talking about how she's an electronics engineer, and at the time she was working on strawberry picking robots. But this talk is about sustainability. Environmentally friendly electronics, and stuff like that. It's a really good talk. I really would recommend you go listen to it. I will link specifically to her talk down in the description and in the show notes. But it's essentially I would think, an underlooked and underserved area of electronics making. So us as makers, I think we're a little bit less guilty of this in some cases and a little bit more guilty of it in other cases, because us as hobbyists, we typically try to repair things and give them a longer service life, or we grab things out of the dumpster, at least I know I do, and then try to either fix them or salvage them, give them a second life or a new life. And also, things like electronics test equipment and stuff like that, we will gladly rescue that and use them on our workbenches after they're past their use-by date in industry. However, she does touch a little bit on that kind of stuff, but it's really interesting to see an engineer's perspective on the whole situation. I know when my wife was in school and she was doing engineering, there was a lot of talks about sustainability. That's a part of engineering. So something that Ayesha said during her talk is that electronics waste is growing faster than our ability to recycle it, and that's even only taking into account the stuff that ends up in a recycling facility, because a lot of the things just get either illegally or carelessly dumped in the landfills, or they get thrown away in countries that don't have a robust recycling system. So I think she was saying it is the biggest contributor to solid waste, or the fastest growing category of solid waste, which is pretty intense. It's pretty extreme. She talks about quite a few things, and again, I will let you go listen to her talk. I think it's really worth listening to. But a couple of the things that she touched on are things that really resonate with me. So one of the things is when you are designing a device or a circuit, you can derate your electronics to give you more longevity. Now, the example she gives for that is, let's say you have a MOSFET that has to, that has to provide tens of amps or hundreds of amps or whatever it may be. Well, choosing a MOSFET that is fit for purpose is fine. However, you can derate that MOSFET, so maybe use two in parallel, or use a MOSFET that can handle twice the amount of current, and that derating will increase the lifespan of your component a huge amount. So if you think about it, that's kind of what we do with electric cars. In electric cars, you have lithium-ion or lithium iron phosphate, but more commonly lithium-ion batteries. And a typical electric car will be set to charge up to 80% of its full charge. That derating of that battery, that charging only up to the 80% mark, will increase its lifespan something like 10 to 100 times more than if you charge all the way to 100% and then all the way down to 0%. So typically when you buy lithium cells from whatever supplier, it tells you the expected life cycles, but that's the expected life cycles at, XYZ depth of discharge. And what they mean by that is that, let's say the lithium iron phosphate cells that I ordered last year, they said they would last, whatever it was, 2,000 cycles at 100% depth of discharge. So that means that if you charge it all the way up to full, and then you drain it all the way down to zero, and then you charge it all the way up to full again, that's 100% depth of discharge. However, if you charge it up to 80%, I think it's 80% depth of discharge is another sort of stat they give you, and then down to 20%, and then back up to 80%. So at 80% depth of discharge, I think you can get something like almost 10x, at least 5x, the amount of charge cycles. That's a really interesting thought about derating your electronics. So if you need to pass, 200 milliamps, maybe that 2N3904 is not a good idea, because you're kind of like at its limit. Maybe a slightly higher end, but not much more expensive MOSFET would be a better idea, right? Because with the MOSFET, you get a lower on resistance, which means a lower voltage drop, which means that it'll more efficiently pass that current. So that's really interesting. Another thing that really hit me is she was talking about modularity in design. And that's something I take quite seriously. This is why I bought the framework laptop. When it was time for me to buy a new laptop for work, I was kind of upset by the fact that my laptop sort of works. I mean, the processor was quite old at that point. It was pre-Ryzen AMD processor. If I could easily put another battery in it, if I could easily, upgrade the CPU and motherboard, the rest of the components would be just fine. And I could have something that's maybe not perfect, but a decent laptop, because, the chassis is still good, the screen's still good, the RAM is still good, the hard drive I had just upgraded, sometime a couple of years ago to a solid state drive, so that would have been still good. But now, because of that stuff doesn't quite work, or you can't upgrade it, then the whole thing goes to the recycling center, which I don't think is correct. I really would like to, keep my screen. There's nothing wrong with my screen. Or even if I don't need the battery, I would love to be able to just disconnect it and recycle it or use it for other things. But you can't do that. So the framework laptop is my attempt to put my money where my mouth is. I do believe that modularity is the way to go. I believe that modularity is the key to reducing waste. So both waste in terms of financial waste, where customers or consumers can just use the stuff they already have and just upgrade the parts that they need or replace the parts that they need, as opposed to all-in-one solutions, like, let's say, an Apple laptop. Today, an Apple laptop, nothing is upgradable. Nothing. You can't even add more storage to them. So I'm totally against this kind of like all-in design. And that's another thing that Ayesha touched on, the fact that you could design modularity into your circuits. So I think it's really a great thing for us to think about, because like a person like me, I'm a hobbyist. But sometimes I do design products for myself, and if I break a piece of it or I need to upgrade a piece of it, it'd be nice to have that modularity built in. So that is something that I already put in my design considerations, and I think I'm going to put more effort into it in the future. Anyways, it's a really good talk, and I hope you guys go listen to her, because it's really nice to see a professional engineer talk about this stuff. I also went onto the Hackaday website and I took a look at the speakers list, and I'm going to put out an open invitation to reach out to me if you gave a talk at basically at any hardware or hacker or maker convention of any kind. If you'd like to continue your talk, if you'd like to sort of talk about your subject of interest, I would ask you to reach out to me, Dan at simpleelectronics.ca. You can reach me there, or through the contact button on simpleelectronics.ca, or through the YouTube interface. If you go to the channel info, my email is there. Reach out to me. I'd love to have you onto the podcast and talk about whatever the heck you want. I think if you feel that you're not worthy, I think you should take a look. And the fact that you're on the Hackaday's guest list, that makes you more than worthy. If you know someone, if you're close to someone who gave a talk, let them know that they're more than welcome to come on and have a chat to my audience here. So as I was perusing Hackaday, looking for the guest speakers, I took a look at their sort of articles section, and I found something super cool. And actually, I think that Linus talked about this on the WAN show already, but there is a printable, 3D printable framework portable handheld case, essentially turning the modular framework, motherboard, battery, and, accessories into a Steam Deck, so a handheld gaming console. So we did have Tommy B on the show, who has made his own as well, which was really nice. But this one here is another attempt at that. And this one's called the Beth Deck. It's by Beth Lee. I think that's her last name, Lee. It's L-E. Anyways, I don't know how to pronounce that. But I will link to the Hackaday article. I think it's really cool. It uses a pretty fancy display. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, WaveShare 8-inch 800p touchscreen, which I believe is very similar to what Tommy B used on his. And it's got the whole parts list. It's got speakers. It's got all sorts of stuff. Beth is saying that you should print in ABS, polycarbonate, or polycarbonate TG, PCTG. I don't know if that was meant to mean PETG, but PCTG. But essentially, you can download the files for free, and then you can, disassemble your framework laptop and go ahead and put this together, and you get a nice handheld gaming system. So I have a little bit of a hack for you guys, because the framework laptop itself and the components for the laptop are very expensive. So, just buying a refurbished Steam Deck is probably a better idea. However, if you go into the framework website, frame.work, and then you go to the marketplace, you can actually order Mainboards that are either discontinued or used or whatever. So, for example, I'm looking here, and a 11th gen i7 laptop 13 mainboard. So you'll still need your RAM, your storage, and a battery. Is on sale right now for $469. dollars. I think that's Canadian, actually. Let me switch this to American for most of my, there we go, USD, save and continue. Get a better idea. Yeah, there we go. So, Core i7 1185 G7, $350 US. And if you want a 12th gen i5, it's $400. Let me see if there's any AMD ones. I don't think so. So essentially, there's one. So the Ryzen 5 7640U is $420. And if you want the fancy Ryzen 7, the one I have, 7840U, it's $650. So yes, it's not going to be the same as a Steam Deck. It can't be the same as a Steam Deck simply because the cost is going to be quite high. However, this is going to be your own custom creation, and it's going to run Windows, and it's going to run Windows flawlessly, or Linux, whatever one you really want, which means that you can customize it the way you want. Also, you can just use it as a PC. Like, it would just work as a PC, which the Steam Deck doesn't quite work like that. First of all, the Steam Deck only has one USB Type-C, so one USB connection in general, which happens to be a USB Type-C, so that's kind of problematic. But yeah, you can build your own device with these mainboards, and I'm sure if you go on eBay, you might be able to find a used motherboard, mainboard on eBay. Even better than that, in like 4 or 5 years, when I'm done with my Framework laptop, I intend, if Framework is still in business, I intend on just upgrading the motherboard, the CPU, the RAM, and maybe the storage. It'll depend if the standards change. But my old stuff, I can make it into this Steam Deck alternative, which I think is the greatest thing ever, because my old laptop right now is just collecting dust. I can't stand sending it to the waste pile, and it doesn't work particularly well as a batteryless laptop because it has issues booting without the battery. I think the current draws too much for the charger. So this kind of modularity is something that I'm really into. It's something that I really think is important, and it's something that I wish that more companies would put thought into. And it doesn't matter if it's just, hackers like myself or, anybody in the maker community that can make use of these modular products. It's the whole community at large, because for the Framework mainboards, there is a case. You can buy a case so that you actually put the mainboard on your desk and use it as a desktop computer. They make a case for it, and I think the case is like $40 or something. It is incredibly cheap, and I believe they also have the CAD files so you can 3D print your case as well. So you can just keep using your mainboard as like a home theater PC or as a secondary computer. Let's say it's really old. You can just give your kids or your nephews or nieces or whatever, or even your aging parents, a sort of like an internet browsing machine. With the parts you already have, they're still going to be good. So I really love that feature. I so wish that more companies would adopt this. So continuing on then, I decided that it would be a really good idea to go back onto the AskElectronic subreddit and try to answer a couple of questions that people have about electronics, beginners starting in the hobby. Because as I said before, and the last time I did this, I think it's a really good service to do to encourage newbies to come into the hobby with arms wide open and answer their more simple questions that get glanced over. And so I'm going to be linking to all of the questions that I am answering. So if you have any way of adding to the conversation, you can go down there and comment and also help newbies. So here I've got dry_opinion_8945. and he asks, this is a 3-hour-old post with no replies. He asks, I want to do a small electronic project and build a device which counts clicks, quote unquote, and plays some kind of sound every 10 clicks. It should be as simple as possible, relatively small, maybe only consisting of some kind of chip, a button to press, a small battery, and a small loudspeaker to make some noise. Can you give me advice where to start with, especially with which type of microchip / controller I could use, or at least a nice page / forum where I can find information about such projects. So my thoughts on this is that this is a very typical entry point for hobbyists in the microcontroller space. This is pretty much what I did to enter the microcontroller space, right? So you've got the switch, which has an input. The input is not directly tied to an output, but there is also an output. You're going to be working with, declaring variables. You're going to be counting up a variable. You're going to be doing digital reads. You're going to be doing digital or analog writes. This is the perfect starter project, right? So my thoughts is that because this person seems brand new to the scene, they don't have any sort of preconceived notions, right? Right away, you can see they're saying what kind of microchip / microcontroller I could use. That means that they don't have an idea of where to even start, right? They're so new that they don't understand that literally any commercial microcontroller can be used. So I would recommend an Arduino Uno. And I know they said they want it small, but I don't know what they mean by small. I said relatively small. I mean, an Arduino Uno is small. So if they want it smaller, they can go look even smaller, or they can reply to my comment and I'll help as much as I can as well. But I recommend the Arduino Uno simply because there are tens of thousands. There are so many tutorials about digital reads and analog or digital writes. In fact, I've got digital read and digital write tutorials on my YouTube channel. So I think Arduino, or a clone of Arduino would be the perfect place to start. And on top of that, I would recommend getting a buzzer. So my recommendation to this person would be to go onto somewhere like Amazon and get a component starter kit. So they'll get more than enough. They'll have more than what they need to get started. They'll even have probably some software with some courses that they can take if they really want. But the other thing that's really important is providing keywords to this person so they understand what they need to look up in order to start their project. That's sort of like already halfway there is deciding what kind of project you want to make. So here's my answer in full. I said, hello, this is a great starter project and is perfect for a microcontroller like an Arduino or any of its clone variations. If you have no size constraints as a beginner, I would strongly recommend, let me just put a comma there before I forget. I would strongly recommend an Arduino Uno or a clone of it because there exist tens of thousands of projects that involve an Arduino, a switch, and a buzzer. I'll put projects and explanation videos and articles. There we go. In fact, if you go to Amazon and get an Arduino component starter kit, you'll get much more than what you need to make your project work. And on top of that, if you look up these keywords on the Arduino reference, so arduino.cc/reference, or on YouTube videos, you should have an idea where to start your learning. And then I wrote digital read with the open bracket, close bracket for detecting the switch press, and analog write, open bracket, close bracket for playing notes with the buzzer. Best of luck. So I'm submitting that at the moment, and we can move on to the next question. Next one up here, we've got a post 4 days ago with no replies by Ashamed Draw 2585. I'm trying to start a new electronics project, but don't have any ideas on what to do. I am intermediate at electronics, so if anyone has good project ideas, I'd love to hear them. Also, I enjoy projects that aren't all electronics. Thanks in advance. Well, we hear this a lot in the forum. So it's obvious that people don't have a way to answer these questions because, I mean, you're just creativity limited and you're not quite offering enough information about your abilities. So it says, I am intermediate at electronics and I enjoy projects that aren't all electronics. Those are like incredibly vague things, right? So the number one thing that I've decided to recommend to people is to make a useless box, right? I've talked about this last time. It's one of those boxes you can put on your desk that has, a button or a switch on it, and then you flip the switch and a little arm comes out and flips the switch back and goes away. So there are so many tutorials, so much code available, so many sort of like how-tos available that it's a project that I believe you won't get stuck on. And it has a decent level of complexity in electronics and in physical design. But beyond that, I think to get inspiration, this is one of those things that AI is extremely good at. So I'm going to copy, just as a trial here, I've been playing with Copilot because it's forced onto your computers now if you update Windows. I've been playing with Copilot a little bit, and because I'm working on that AI video coming out, I'm just going to copy and paste the question into Copilot and see what Copilot pops out as far as answers, because I'm going to reply to this person and tell them about my idea about the useless box, but also I want to sort of empower that person in the future that maybe they can just ask AI, because AI is great at summarizing these kinds of things. So let's see. So the first thing that it recommends is Smart Garden System. Combine your love of electronics with gardening by creating an automated watering and lighting system for your plants. See, that's a really good idea. It says you can use sensors to monitor soil moisture and light levels and automate watering and lighting based on the data. Plus, you can add a display, show real-time data, create a mobile app. Yeah, this is actually a really good idea. Smart gardening, because houseplants can be grown indoors. There are plants of varying difficulties, and so you can start at a really easy houseplant and work your way towards something harder, or even growing like a tomato plant indoors or something. So yeah, that's a really good idea. Number 2 is interactive LED art. Create a piece of art that incorporates LEDs controlled by a microcontroller like an Arduino or Raspberry Pi. You can make it interactive by adding touch sensors, motion detectors, and sound sensors. This project allows you to explore creative design while working on the electronics. Yeah, not a bad idea. Number 3, home automation. Build a smart home device such as a voice-controlled light switch. That I like. A temperature and humidity monitor. Yep. Even a smart lock. I probably wouldn't make a smart lock. Although you can make a smart lock for something not critical, like not your front door. You can make a little chest with a smart lock on it. So that's pretty good. You can integrate this project with platforms like Google Assistant or Alexa. Probably wouldn't do that. Wearable tech. Number 4, like a fitness tracker, heart rate monitor, unique piece of fashion. I'm jiving with that a little bit less. Electronic music instrument. Build a custom electronic music instrument such as a theremin, a drum pad, or a MIDI controller. That's not a bad idea. I like that too. However, that reminds me the other option is to make a little audio amplifier. I like that as well. Just a quick interruption to talk about this episode's sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay has been a long-term sponsor of the channel, and I think they're a good match for my channel because they provide quality PCBs for a reasonable price. You can get boards manufactured up to 100 mils by 100 mils for just $5, including shipping to Canada, $15 US, including shipping to USA, $12 US, which is incredibly cheap for professionally manufactured PCBs. I can personally attest to the quality of these PCBs, and so if you want a circuit immortalized forever, check out PCBWay.com with the link in the description. Now back to the conversation. Number 6, Robotics Project. construct a small robot that performs a specific task like a line following robot or a robot arm. This project can involve a mix of electronics, mechanics, programming, making it well-rounded. Yep, that's good. And a DIY smart mirror. So it came up with some decent ideas, but I think what's nice is that someone struggling with creativity or like getting started in projects, they have a really good out by asking AI these questions, because you can just, you can keep asking, be like, no, that doesn't really suit my needs. I want something a little harder. And it'll spit out some more. You could say, I want something easier, spit out some more. It could say more programming, less programming. AI is a very good tool at making your brain sort of getting inspiration. How about that? Because AI is a great summary engine, right? It can quickly tell you the types of things it was taught on. And sometimes Google searching these things is kind of difficult. So yeah, I'm going to go type up that answer for the person, but I'm going to recommend the either an audio amplifier, which is great because you can add it. You can go as complex as you want because you can add, tone adjusting, tone shifting, like making, adjusting the mids, the highs, the lows, volume, distortion, all sorts of things. And also the useless box. That's my recommendations. And then failing that, I'll let them know that they should probably solicit the advice of an AI for ideas. Next one up, we've got an 8-day-old post by user Slow Rider with a 0 for an O and a 3 for an E. So SL0 Rider. Anyways, he's got a post says, help. Would someone be able to ID this tactile push button? And I chose this topic for a reason, and you'll see why. He posts a picture, and he says it's from a mouse's PCB. That button is toasted. It's for the wheel button, and many mouse I use has crappy wheel button. I work on a desk that requires extensive uses of wheel button. This mouse has 8 buttons, and I have remapped the wheel button to another button. Like this mouse for a 2-scroll wheel and memory on board, so I'm trying to save it. So the mouse model is an Elecom M-DWL01DB, for which L is the size of the mouse, has 3 sizes to choose. Now, I chose this topic specifically because when I open the image, he's got a box around the mouse button that he's talking about. And I recognize this. It is actually a standard mouse button. I'm not sure if you guys know this, but there's only a couple of standards that mice use for their buttons. So the first kind is going to be like a micro switch, right? So it has a rectangle body, 3 pins, and it's like the micro switches you're used to with the little levers, the metal levers on them, but they don't have the metal levers. They just have the little, like just the tab that pushes in. So that's not one of those. Another style that they have is like a 6x6, like a flat 6mm by 6mm flat tactile. And that is not what we're talking about either. What he seems to have is the last style, which is a 6x6 by 7.3 mouse button. So it's like a square by 7.3 millimeters tall. And you can get these buttons anywhere, like AliExpress or whatever. They usually have a little like crown around them, so you just have to order the one that suits your mouse button. But yeah, mouse buttons are fairly standard. And so for this person, I would recommend not to replace the mouse button with whatever was in there. I think whatever was in there is it doesn't really matter. I would go and replace it with a name brand button. So something by Omron or something like that fits the same footprint, because then you're probably going to end up getting a lot more cycles out of your button. And most of these buttons are the exact same. They have the 2 legs, there's through hole, and that looks like to be the case here. It doesn't provide really a view of the underside. Alternatively, the other thing you can do is just order a whole bunch of mouse buttons and just be aware that they're going to eventually wear out. And so I think a good middle ground is, I don't actually know how to pronounce it. I've never pronounced it out loud. It's Kailh, Kailh, a Kailh button. So they're a button manufacturer that are fairly common, and they're upmarket for the from the cheaper parts. And I'm just looking on AliExpress. It looks like about $2 USD, and you get 10 of these. So if you just get good at soldering, you can just desolder the button and solder a new button in, and you're probably going to get a lot more life out of your switches. They say that they're rated for 10 million key presses, and maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But the point is, at that price, as long as you don't mind doing a little bit of soldering, you're probably going to end up greatly extending the life of your mouse. So I would go that way personally. I would just get, 10 or 20, whatever good deal you can get for only a couple bucks, and then just solder a new button there and keep using your mouse quite happily. All right, and I think the last one I'm going to do for this episode is by Pitiful Standard 8577, and he writes, or she, I guess, or they write, help making my own gaming controller. Hello, I'm in little need of some help. I'm trying to learn a new hobby and I want to make a gaming controller. Is there anyone who could post Amazon links to the basic physical parts I'll need to make a 20 button and 2 joystick configuration? 20 buttons, that's a lot. If I know exactly what's needed, I can look up each one at my own pace and learn how to work with all the parts. I would also prefer a chip or some board that would make the software portion streamlined so it's practically plug and play if I build it correctly. Well, the reason that I chose this one is because there is a controller on the market that is fully DIY. It's called the Alpaca Controller. Oh, they have another controller, Capybara. Interesting. But yeah, it's the Alpaca, Alpakka, controller by Input Labs. And it's fully open source as far as I know. So it has a single stick. No, actually it has a twin stick, but the other stick is a little bit weird. It's got a scroll wheel. It's got, like the 8, the 4 direction buttons, the 4 ABXY buttons, 2 triggers. It's got a whole bunch of stuff, but what's nice is that it is fully open source. So you can 3D print this yourself. All the components are there. The PCB is there. So even if this person doesn't necessarily want to embark into the journey of getting an Alpaca controller, at the very least, they can learn from the development of the Alpaca, and, they can go from there. They can see what the Alpaca team, what the Input Labs team have decided to use on their controller, and then this person can start from there and adapt accordingly. On top of that, the Alpaca uses an RP2040 chip. So it is pretty much as simple as you can get. It's a ubiquitous chip, but on top of that is that they wrote the code for it. So since there's already code, then, this person could even go on and, experiment with their code or modify as needed. So, yeah, I've been meaning to make a video about this. I have actually all the components needed for the Alpaca controller. I just need to reprint a couple of parts and then I'll be good to go. So I think this is a good starting spot, and I think it's a fantastic project, but I think it's a little ambitious if you plan on starting from zero to get something working, because, switches and inputs and whatever, that stuff is kind of easy, but the ergonomics is the difficult part. So yeah, I wish this person lots of luck. Continuing on then with the episode, recently I was faced with an interesting question. So my old man has first of all, he has a very old multimeter, and he complained about it. So I went home, I went into my bin of multimeters, I grabbed a decent multimeter. I grabbed one that was, vetted by a North American company, and I gave it to him because I know that he works in 110 volt quite often. Like, he does his own house wiring, that kind of stuff. So that's no problem. But then he said, I would really like a clamp multimeter like what you have. So I was like, really? That's interesting. So naturally, I was like, this is going to be the simplest thing I've ever done. I'm going to go get him a Unity UT210E. So just bringing up the price here, and on Amazon, it is $73.49 Canadian. I don't know what the heck happened, because I bought mine for like $40, and now it's like $75. That is nearly double. So I was like, there's no way that I'm getting him one with the little jaws like that for $75. I don't believe that it's worth $75. And just thinking about it right now as I record this this episode, probably what's happening is a price ramp up because Black Friday is coming. So that makes a lot more sense. But anyways, it's not worth $75 in my mind. If I lost mine, I'd probably buy another one for $75. But for what my dad needs it for, the UT210E is, the clamp multimeter that I made a video on all these years ago, is not really ideal for him. I'd like something with a bigger jaw opening and whatever, right? So then I was like, what the heck do I buy him? Well, because the 210E was so expensive, I actually, I'm just seeing this now. I'm seeing that there's a UT201 Plus, and that's a 4,000 count clamp meter, and that's $45. I probably would have picked that if I would have actually seen that. But regardless, I hadn't seen it. So I thought, okay, if I need to get my dad a reliable, safe multimeter that I'm going to pay for out of my own pocket, what the hell am I going to buy? And I fell onto Kaiweets, because Kaiweets has been very reliable. I love my Kaiweets multimeter, and Kaiweets now makes clamp meters. So now they have two clamp meter options. Let me just double check the two. So yeah, they have, what's the model number on this one? They don't say the model numbers. Okay, so they have the KC602, which is a smart clamp meter. So it just has a couple of push buttons and supposed to do most of the stuff itself. I'm not a fan of that. I think my dad's an old man, very old school. He wants a ka-chunk range switch. So I got him the older version, which is the the Kaiweets HT206D. So that is a clamp meter, and I paid $55 Canadian. So a really good deal. So I ordered it. I unboxed it on camera, and I did a little bit of a first look video. But I find it really interesting of the actual question. I just take a look at tools, and I can make, recommendations for electronics type things. But when it comes to sort of like my dad, who mostly does AC wiring, what did I choose for him? And the answer was the Kaiweets. So I had to look at it. I put it through the Kaiweets test suite, which was really nice, the multimeter gauntlet, and it passed with flying colors, which is really good. Also a cool feature on it has a non-contact voltage detector on the tip of the clamp. So his non-contact voltage detector died. So now he has this one to use. And we're just going to have to see over the long run, see what, if he likes it or not. The price has gone up. So I paid $55. It is now $65, but there's a $5 coupon. So yes, I'm guessing the prices are slowly ramping up before Black Friday, but I just thought you guys would want to know, like, if I had to buy a clamp multimeter, what kind of clamp multimeter would I buy with my own money? And so there's your answer. I chose the Kaiweets. Now, I didn't have the chance to test this, but another option could have been an Astro AI clamp meter. So the Kaiweets one is 6,000 counts. This Astro AI one is 2,000 counts. but it is $36 and there's a 10% off coupon. So it's a lot cheaper, but at the same time, that seems like a really good value. But, I haven't tested it. So I'd be a little worried about giving this to my dad, and it, maybe the installation is not very good. Astro AI also has an even cheaper one, $26, 2000 count clamp meter for $26 and 10% off. So there's quite a market in these clamp meters. I don't know enough about the everyday use of like an AC detecting clamp meter in order to make an informed decision on what people should buy. Like, I don't know what people who are biased in, the working with AC voltage would want for a clamp meter. So what I'd love to do is, if you guys have opinions on what kind of clamp meters you would recommend for someone who does mostly like their own house wiring, not like a professional, not an electrician. I'm talking about like someone who just wants to like install a hot water heater from time to time, or like install a new, change a switch or change a wall plug. What kind of multimeter would you recommend? Would you go for like something a lot more high end, like a Klein or a Milwaukee or a Fluke? Or would you go for a Kaiwitz like I did? Or would you go for as cheap as possible? Let me know in the comments below. I'm thinking maybe I can reach out to some of these companies and maybe we're going to get some testing going, but that'll depend on the interest levels, both of the audience and of those companies. Other than that, I'm getting back into the remote control hobby because it is starting to get cold outside, and I've got all this remote control stuff that I bought in order to make videos. So the snow speeder, I have to get back to work on it because in its current iteration, it isn't very far from being completed, which is really nice. So I just need to put a little bit more work into that, finish printing some stuff, and this thing is going to be absolutely insane. And then I have first-person view cameras and a headset that I ordered last year for the snow speeder. So the snow speeder needs to be refinished for this year, which I'm pretty excited for. But in the meantime, I have a wheeled platform to test a couple things. So I bought a little remote control buggy. So it's like an open wheel type thing. It's a 1/12 scale, and I've been doing my research online, and I found that there's a really good brand to get into the remote control hobby for relatively inexpensive, and that brand is WLToys. Now, the big problem with WLToys is that the model numbers are a mouthful. The model numbers used to be like digit letter, but now it's like 6 digits. So just to give you an example, the model I purchased specifically is a WLToys. I think it's 124, so 124017. I think that's the model number. Not 100% sure about the first 3 digits. Like I told you, like the naming convention is absolutely horrid. So I'm just looking it up on AliExpress as I talk about it here. It is 124017, and 124019 is the same thing, except that it's like a different body style. It's more of like a side by side than a buggy. So pretty funny. But anyways, I ordered this, and I did an unboxing video. I did a first look. I just need to bring it outside now and have a play. So I got to drive kind of a good distance from the house, right, to avoid doxing. But apparently these things are going to be really cool. And as usual, when I do remote control stuff, I go a little bit nuts. Anytime I start a new hobby, this is not starting a new hobby necessarily, but it's continuing an old one. I still have a 3.3 Revo, if you know what that is. It's a big monster truck. I ordered some spare parts for this so that I can, put it together on live streams or whatever when I need to do maintenance. So I ordered a carbon fiber chassis for it. It has an aluminum chassis at the moment. I ordered some on-road wheels, not to wear out the off-road wheels. So I got all this stuff. I got some more off-road wheels. I bought pliers for the shock shafts. What else did I buy? I think that just about covers it. And then I finally decided to replace my old school Futaba radio. So I have an old surface radio that I used to use for all my RC surface vehicles. I replaced the FM module. This is how old it is, has a long antenna. Well, I replaced that module in it with a 2.4 gigahertz module, and I bought a lithium battery for it. This was a long time ago, but the thing is old as hell. So I finally upgraded. I ordered a new surface radio for all my RC devices. So I went with the FlySky FSG7P, and so this is brand new. It's not actually that expensive. It's $115. But, you know, I'll be able to control the RC boat that I made, the toy boat, the snow speeder, all sorts of stuff like that. It'll all be on the same controller. It has proportional mixing and all sorts of cool stuff. But yeah, this is that's pretty much the gist of what you're going to be seeing in the next little while. Hopefully I'll be working on these things during the live streams. If you haven't joined the live streams, they're a lot of fun. But yeah, so that's the updates at the moment. I've got a couple videos that I need to get working on, and at the moment my favorite podcast is on, so I need to get this done, get this edited so I can upload it for you guys, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. So thanks everyone for watching, thanks for listening, thanks for being here. Thanks everyone for being subscribed and for your kind words. It really helps when I'm working on these things instead of enjoying my time watching other podcasts. And hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for listening.